She believed she had hit the jackpot, a man of influence, status, and unwavering respect. A distinguished judge. A husband who promised stability and devotion. But within 24 hours, her dream crumbled into an unimaginable nightmare. A revelation so humiliating, so final, that it destroyed their marriage before it even had a chance to begin. One night. One devastating truth. And a betrayal no woman ever expects. Because in the end, it wasn't just about what he concealed, it was about everything he would never measure up to. Before we unravel this shocking story, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more jaw-dropping true stories. Clara had always been someone who believed in dreams, the kind of dreams that, when realized, promised to give you everything you had ever worked for. A successful career, loving relationships, and most importantly, a partner who would stand by you through everything. She was young, ambitious, and driven, qualities that had carried her to the top in her field. She had the world at her feet. But there was one thing she longed for more than anything, a love that was as extraordinary as she was. And then, she met him. Jackson Winters, a man whose reputation preceded him. He was a man who had it all, power, respect, and a career that demanded the admiration of anyone who knew him. He was a judge, a respected Texas judge, known for his sharp intellect, his impeccable sense of justice, and his calm demeanor in the courtroom. Jackson wasn't just a man of law, he was a man of principles, the kind of person people trusted, relied on, and looked up to. His career had flourished, and he had built a life for himself that many could only dream of. When they first met, it wasn't fireworks or love at first sight. It was something more profound, a magnetic pull between two people who had both worked hard for everything they had, yet had never truly found someone they could build a future with. They talked. They laughed. They found comfort in each other's company as if they had known each other for years, even though they had just met. For Clara, Jackson wasn't just a successful man, he was everything she had hoped for. There was something about him, his calmness, his sharp wit, and that quiet strength that made her feel secure, even in the most uncertain moments. He listened when she spoke, cared deeply about her thoughts and ambitions, and never once made her feel as if she had to tone down her drive to fit in. He encouraged her. He made her feel seen and heard in ways that no one else ever had. And in return, Clara admired him, his intelligence, his confidence, the way he stood so tall in a room full of people. To Clara, Jackson wasn't just a man, he was the embodiment of everything she wanted in a partner. Their relationship moved quickly, too quickly for some, but for Clara, it felt right. She had always been someone who followed her heart, and this time, it led her straight to Jackson. They spent countless nights talking until the early hours of the morning, sharing their hopes, dreams, and fears. There was something magnetic about their connection. They fit together like two pieces of a puzzle that had been waiting to find each other. Before long, they were inseparable. Clara moved into Jackson's home, and their weekends were filled with quiet moments of contentment, cooking dinner together, long walks in the park, lazy Sunday afternoons where they'd sit and talk about their plans for the future. Their relationship was not built on grand gestures, but on the kind of steady, unwavering companionship that often outlasts anything temporary. Jackson's respect for Clara's independence, her ambition, and her intelligence only deepened with time. And Clara, in turn, saw in Jackson a man who had fought for everything he had, just as she had. Their shared values and dreams cemented their bond. Jackson proposed after only a year of dating, and Clara, feeling the same certainty in her heart, said yes without hesitation. The wedding plans were simple but beautiful. They both agreed on a modest yet elegant ceremony, something that reflected their love and values, without the need for extravagance. The day was perfect. Clara, radiant in her wedding dress, walked down the aisle with a smile that was impossible to wipe away. Jackson, standing tall at the altar, had eyes only for her. Their vows were sincere, heartfelt promises that they would stand by each other, no matter what life threw their way. It was everything Clara had dreamed of, a perfect wedding day, filled with love and joy, the kind of day she had waited her whole life for. She and Jackson were finally starting the life they had always imagined. The honeymoon was meant to be the culmination of their dreams, the beginning of forever, just the two of them, embarking on a new chapter filled with hope and promise. But what happened that night, the night of their wedding, would change everything. Clara had never expected that the day she'd looked forward to her entire life would be followed by a revelation so shocking that it would shatter her world in the most unexpected of ways. Jackson, the man she had trusted with everything she had, revealed a truth that would forever alter their relationship. It wasn't a betrayal of the heart, nor was it a dark secret about his past. No, it was something far more personal, something that Clara never could have prepared herself for. On their wedding night, Clara discovered something about Jackson that would make her question everything. A secret about his body that he had kept hidden until now, a secret that left Clara speechless and confused. It was a discovery that would force her to reevaluate her entire marriage in a way she never could have anticipated. This wasn't the fairy tale she had imagined. It wasn't the perfect beginning to their life together. It was a moment of truth, and for Clara, the truth was more than she could handle. She found herself facing a reality she wasn't ready for, one that would force her to make an unimaginable decision just hours after the vows had been exchanged. Clara had dreamed of this day, but nothing in her dreams had prepared her for the shock of what she would find when the lights were turned off and the honeymoon night began. What was supposed to be the most intimate moment of their lives became a nightmare she couldn't escape. In the end, the man she thought she knew so well was not the person she thought he was. And the life she had envisioned for herself would never be the same. Clara and Jackson had just stepped into their honeymoon suite, a place meant to mark the beginning of their life together as husband and wife. The suite was extravagant, the kind of place she had dreamed of since she was young, spacious, with a breathtaking view of the city lights twinkling below, and the room itself draped in soft fabrics and delicate details. The scent of fresh roses mingled with the faint fragrance of the sea breeze drifting in through the open balcony doors. Everything was perfect, just as they had imagined it would be. Clara had been waiting for this moment all day, the moment when she would finally be alone with Jackson, away from the rush of the wedding festivities, able to be together without the eyes of the world on them. It was supposed to be a night of intimacy and connection, a night to solidify everything they had built over the last few months. They had exchanged vows earlier that afternoon, their promises to each other spoken with a sincerity that felt timeless. Now, it was just the two of them, in this gorgeous suite, about to embark on their honeymoon. The anticipation was palpable. But as Clara began to undress, ready to step into their first night as newlyweds, she noticed something in Jackson that she hadn't expected. At first, she thought it was her nerves, perhaps the tension of the day catching up with her. But as she looked at him more closely, she realized something was off. Jackson, the man who had been so calm and collected throughout their relationship, seemed unusually stiff. His usual confident demeanor was nowhere to be found. There was a nervousness in his eyes that made Clara pause. His gaze kept flicking around the room, avoiding hers, as if he were searching for a way out of the moment. She brushed it off, thinking it was just the weight of the day, the excitement of it all finally catching up with him. But then, as she moved toward him, a strange unease began to settle in. He wasn't making eye contact. He wasn't returning her usual affectionate gestures. His hands, usually so sure of themselves when they touched her, were shaking slightly, betraying a tension that Clara couldn't ignore. It wasn't like him at all. She took a deep breath, trying to dispel the growing sense of discomfort, and reached for him, brushing her fingers lightly over his arm. But he stepped back, just a little, as if the simple touch made him uncomfortable. Clara's stomach tightened. She couldn't ignore it now. Something was wrong. Jackson? Her voice was soft, almost tentative. Are you okay? You seem distant. He gave a half-smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm fine, Clara. Just a little tired, that's all. It's been a long day." She nodded, but inside, a knot began to form. He wasn't acting like the man she had fallen in love with. He wasn't acting like the man who had whispered sweet promises to her on their wedding day, his voice full of warmth and love. He wasn't acting like the man who had kissed her with passion only hours earlier. There was something she couldn't place, a shadow between them that had never been there before. Clara tried again. She moved closer, this time pressing her body gently against his, her lips finding his in a soft kiss, hoping that would ease the tension between them. But instead of responding with the heat and desire she had expected, he froze, his lips barely brushing against hers. It was nothing like their usual closeness, and the sharp, unfamiliar discomfort coursing through her only intensified. Jackson stepped back again, his eyes avoiding hers once more. His breathing was shallow, and he looked like he was trying to hold himself together, as if fighting some internal battle that Clara couldn't understand. "What's going on, Jackson?" Clara asked, her voice quivering now. She could feel the growing panic in her chest. This wasn't like him. He had always been open with her, always so communicative and tender. They had never had issues in their relationship, they were always on the same page, understanding each other without words. But tonight felt different. "I'm just not feeling well," he muttered, but the words didn't sound convincing, even to him. Clara's heart sank. She had known him long enough to see through his attempts at hiding the truth. His excuses weren't adding up, and her instincts told her that something far deeper was at play. She took a deep breath, summoning her courage. "Jackson, we're married now. We're supposed to be able to tell each other everything. What's going on?" Jackson swallowed hard, his face pale now, a sheen of sweat covering his forehead. For a moment, he didn't speak. His eyes darted away, and Clara could see that he was wrestling with something that was clearly difficult for him to say. Finally, with a sigh, he blurted it out in one breathless rush, "Clara, I have erectile dysfunction. I know it's a lot to take in, but I've been struggling with it for a while." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. For a moment, her mind went blank. She stood frozen in place, her heart pounding in her chest. She had heard of erectile dysfunction before, of course, but never in the context of her own marriage. Never in the context of their relationship. Never with Jackson. Her thoughts raced, trying to process what he had just confessed. She looked at him, her mind still in shock. He had kept this secret from her. For months, maybe even longer. He had been hiding something so fundamental, something so deeply personal. And now, on their wedding night, it was all spilling out in the most unimaginable way. She had never, in all her years of knowing him, suspected that he was carrying such a heavy burden. She couldn't believe it. As if that revelation wasn't enough to send her spiraling, Clara's eyes fell on the more physical reality of the situation. Not only was Jackson's manhood far smaller than she had ever imagined, but it became painfully clear that his struggles went beyond just an occasional issue. The truth of his condition was staring her in the face in a way she could never have prepared for. The man she had married, this seemingly confident, well-respected judge, this man of power and influence, was a stranger to her in this moment. But the deepest wound wasn't just the discovery of his condition. No, what hurt the most was the fact that he had kept this from her. He had hidden it from her, kept it locked away behind the walls he had so carefully built around himself. He had never once been open about his struggles, never once confided in her about something that was so crucial to their relationship. Clara's anger didn't come immediately, it built slowly, quietly, a simmering wave that rolled over her. How could he have done this? How could he have allowed her to marry him without knowing something this essential? She had trusted him completely, believed in their bond, in their honesty with each other. And yet here she was, facing a truth that shattered everything she thought she knew about the man she had pledged her life to. For the first time since they had met, Clara didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to react. Her mind was swirling with 1,000 emotions: betrayal, confusion, hurt, but most of all, a deep, profound sense of disbelief. She had married Jackson thinking she knew him, but now, everything seemed tainted by the secret he had kept from her. This wasn't just a moment of vulnerability, it was a betrayal of their very foundation. And as Jackson stood before her, his eyes pleading for understanding, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this night, this moment, would forever change the course of their relationship. The wedding night, the one they had both dreamed of, was now nothing like they had imagined. It was the night everything they had built came crashing down. The room was thick with silence, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. Clara could still hear the echo of Jackson's confession ringing in her ears, her heart pounding as she tried to grasp the full weight of what he had just admitted. Her wedding night, the night that was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter, had turned into something completely unrecognizable. She had expected love, passion, and the deepening of their bond. Instead, she had been met with a devastating revelation, one that threatened to unravel everything they had built together. Clara took a slow, shaky breath and lifted her gaze to meet his. Jackson, the man she had just married, the man she had given her heart to, stood before her like a ghost of himself. His face was pale, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides as if bracing for impact. He knew what was coming, he had to know. There was no way she could let this go. She stepped forward, her eyes burning with betrayal. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. Jackson hesitated, looking away, and that was all the answer she needed. Clara's stomach twisted in fury. "How long, Jackson?" she pressed, her voice rising now. He sighed, rubbing his face as if the weight of his deception had finally caught up to him. "A few years," he admitted quietly. Clara felt the room spin. A few years? He had known for years that he had this condition, known that he was incapable of fulfilling one of the most basic expectations of marriage, and yet he had never said a word. Not once had he warned her, not once had he given her the chance to make an informed decision before walking down the aisle. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You knew," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "You knew this whole time and still let me believe we were going to have a normal marriage?" Jackson exhaled sharply. "Clara, I didn't." "No," she cut him off, her voice shaking now. "You don't get to talk your way out of this. You lied to me, Jackson. You looked me in the eyes, told me you loved me, promised me a future, and you knew all along that you were keeping something this huge from me?" He took a step toward her, his hands outstretched as if to calm her, but she stepped back, disgusted by his audacity. "Clara, I wanted to tell you. I was scared, okay? I didn't want to lose you." She let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow and sharp. "So instead, you decided to trap me in a marriage built on a lie? Is that it? You thought I wouldn't find out? That I'd just, what? Be okay with this?" Jackson's expression darkened. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Jackson?" she demanded. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you manipulated me into marrying you without giving me the truth. You let me believe we had a future together, one built on honesty, love, and trust. And yet you've been lying to me since the beginning." His jaw tightened. "I love you, Clara. That hasn't changed." She scoffed. "You don't lie to someone you love, Jackson. You don't deceive them like this. You don't let them walk into something so life-altering without knowing the full truth." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. "I thought we could work through it." "Work through it?" Clara repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. "How, exactly?" Were you planning to tell me before or after I spent years wondering why my husband refused to touch me? Before or after I started thinking there was something wrong with me? Or were you just hoping I'd accept it and suffer in silence?" Jackson looked away, unable to meet her gaze. His silence spoke louder than words. Clara's chest heaved, her breath coming in quick, angry bursts. Her wedding night was officially ruined. More than that, her trust in Jackson was shattered beyond repair. The weight of the betrayal pressed down on her like a crushing force, suffocating, inescapable. "You didn't just betray me," she said, her voice eerily calm now. "You stole my choice from me. You let me walk into this marriage blind, believing I knew the man I was marrying." Jackson's eyes filled with desperation. "I was afraid, Clara. Afraid that if I told you, you'd leave me." She gave a slow nod, her expression unreadable. "And you know what? You were right." Jackson's breath caught. "Clara, wait," but she was already reaching for her phone. Her hands were steady, her decision firm. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice filled with panic. She looked at him, her expression cold. "I'm making sure this sham of a marriage ends before it even begins." His face paled. "Clara, please. Don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, try to." "No," she interrupted, her voice final. "You don't get to make that decision for me anymore." And with that, she made the call that would change everything. By morning, the papers were filed. Their marriage, brief, deceptive, and tainted by lies, was over before it had even truly begun. At first, it seemed like something that could be handled quietly. A private matter between a man and his wife, a marriage that had collapsed in record time. Annulments happened all the time, didn't they? People rushed into things, made mistakes, and walked away when they realized it wasn't right. But this wasn't just any couple. This was Judge Jackson Carter, one of Texas' most respected legal minds, a man whose reputation had been built on fairness, intellect, and unwavering integrity. A man who had spent years meticulously crafting his public image, standing tall in courtrooms, making decisions that shaped lives. Now, that very reputation was hanging by a thread. At first, Jackson did everything he could to contain the fallout. He called in favors, trying to keep the court records sealed. He met with his closest advisors, hoping to suppress the whispers before they grew into full-blown headlines. But some things were simply too big to bury. It started as a rumor, quiet, almost dismissible. A respected judge had his marriage annulled after just one day? Something was off. The story trickled through legal circles first, then spread beyond, like a slow-moving fire that suddenly found dry brush and exploded into an uncontrollable inferno. Then, the leak started. The court documents, stamped and filed, were never meant to be seen by the public. But the words within them carried more weight than Jackson could have ever anticipated. The accusations were there, clear as day: fraudulent concealment of a critical medical condition prior to marriage. The legal world was stunned. The headlines were brutal. Judge Carter's 24-hour marriage ends in shocking betrayal. Respected Texas judge accused of deception in marriage scandal. From the courtroom to the bedroom, the secret that ended his marriage overnight. The public couldn't get enough. Talk shows dissected every detail. Social media was flooded with theories, debates, and memes. Some sided with Clara, calling her a victim of deception. She was tricked, they said. She had every right to leave. Others were less sympathetic. Marriage is about more than just that, they argued. Did she love him at all? Twitter threads debated ethics and morality. Was Jackson's omission truly a betrayal, or was Clara's reaction too extreme? People took sides, some defending him, others crucifying him. Reporters camped outside Jackson's office, cameras flashing as he arrived each morning. The questions were relentless. Judge Carter, do you have a statement? Is it true you hid your condition from your wife? Do you regret deceiving her? Jackson kept his head down, pushing through the chaos, but inside, he knew, this wasn't going away. His personal life was now public spectacle, and the respect he had spent years building was slipping through his fingers. His opponents in the legal field used it against him. Whispers started among colleagues, former allies distancing themselves. Clients began second-guessing him. How could they trust a man who couldn't even be honest in his own marriage? Clara, on the other hand, was thrust into an entirely different storm. She hadn't asked for this level of attention. All she had wanted was to protect herself, to walk away from something that had been built on lies. But the world had its own opinions. Some called her brave, a woman who refused to be manipulated, who stood up for herself despite the pressure to stay silent. Others labeled her heartless, shallow, a gold digger who had abandoned her husband over something beyond his control. She deactivated her social media, but the messages still found her. Strangers sent her emails, some supporting her, others calling her names she wouldn't dare repeat. News outlets offered her exclusive interviews. Some wanted to frame her as an empowered woman taking control of her destiny. Others wanted to paint her as the villain. But Clara knew the truth. She had walked away because she had been deceived. Because Jackson had chosen to lie. Because trust, once broken, could never be fully restored. And no headline, no public opinion, was going to change that. So now, the question is yours to answer. Was Clara justified in walking away? Was her reaction fair, or was it too harsh? Should she have given Jackson a chance to explain, to work through it together? Or was deception, no matter the reason, enough to end a marriage before it even truly began? Every relationship is built on trust, but when that trust is broken before the vows have even settled, is there really a way forward? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you thought this was unbelievable, just wait until you hear about the bride who discovered her groom was living a double life, minutes before walking down the aisle. A secret family, hidden identities, and a last-minute decision that changed everything. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, so you never miss another shocking true story.